Good afternoon. How's everybody doing today? This is the Play Guitar Podcast live edition. Getting everything set here. Episode 131, if you can believe it. It's hard for me to believe. We're going to be taking a challenge today. I'm pretty excited about this. It's going to be a lot of fun. And we have a few challenges from here. We've done. Actually, I'm going to go through the challenges we've done just this year. We've had a few this year, and they're always fun. And it's always cool to see how people are doing. And this one is going to be a little different. And actually, this podcast is going to be a little different. It's not going to be near as long as a regular podcast. We're just going to kick off the challenge today. So we're going to see who's in the chat before we officially start the show off today. Kevin first. That's right. It says, don't be that person who forgets to hit like. I don't say that enough, man. Please like and please subscribe and please hit the little bell thing so that you don't miss it, because it's a lot of fun. We try to keep everybody involved in the show. Even if I'm doing the podcast here, I keep checking the chat, see how everything's going on. Evan's here. Evan, I got to hear Evan's song that he's working on today and his vocals, and I'm very impressed. And I've got some tips for you too. So I've got some ideas now that I've heard what you sound like. Now I've got some things that I think you're going to be really happy about. So I'll be in touch with Evan about that later. Steve is here. Let's see here. David's here. And everybody's talking about how hot it is. It's hot. It is hot today. It feels terrible. And let's see here. Kevin. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started with the podcast. And as soon as I get everything set up and introduce the challenge and see what we're dealing with here. First thing to do, record. I don't think Josh is here. He usually reminds me to record. And, if you've been to the live show once or twice, you know that sometimes we do this intro a few times till we get it just right. Okay. Here we go. How's your guitar tone? Today kicks off our summer guitar tone challenge. It's time to work on our sound and get toned and ready for the summer. So stay tuned. Hello and welcome, friends, to episode 131 of the Play Guitar Podcast. I'm Lee, and this is the podcast that's determined to make you a better guitar player. No matter if you're just starting out or you've been playing for years, this is the show that will help you become the guitarist that you've always wanted to be. Today's show is not going to be that long, but it's going to be a whole lot of fun. I'm very excited to announce the Summer Guitar Tone Challenge. So, here's the idea. Just this year, the Play Guitar community has been very, very active. We've had the Guitar 30 Challenge, we've had the Lick Building Challenge, and we actually, in our weekend YouTube Hangouts, we've had a 3-month challenge. So what would you like to be able to achieve with the guitar playing in 3 months? Well, the way things are going, we may have a little bit more time on our hands and not a whole lot to do. Maybe, hopefully not, but maybe. But my take on this odd time that we've been going through in our lives, right from the outset, I've said, okay, this is going to happen. So how can we be better than we were before all this started? How can we come out of this situation, this negative experience, in a more positive way? And we've been doing great with that. Members of our community, they've been working very hard, and I get to see the results each week. But we've been focusing mainly on our skills, and rightfully so. That's usually the things that need the most attention. But gear and tone, it's a very significant part of a guitar player's process. It can sidetrack you, though. It could bankrupt you. It frustrates you. But on the other hand, it can also inspire you and can elevate your playing when your gear is set up and your tone is the way you like it. So the idea is to take the time that we have and get ourselves together. And so my challenge to you this summer is to get your tone together. So we have rules. There's usually rules to a challenge, right? So I like to have usually just one or two rules. We got one rule today. And the rule for this challenge is you can't buy anything new. You got to use what you got. Well, that's no fun, right? What does that mean? Well, if you think about it, what it means is we have to spend some time with our gear. Just like you have to spend time working on guitar skills to make them your own. If you think about it, we have chord shapes and scale patterns, chord progressions in guitar playing. And the main ones, you could spend 2 months and learn them all. Does that mean you're a great guitar player? You have to spend time. Time is the key to a lot of getting better with the guitar. You have to spend some time on some things. And the guitar gear that you have, you may not have spent as much time with it as you needed. You may have got it and expected it to work right away. Sometimes it takes a little bit of focus. Most guitar gear that you have, it's not a one-trick pony. It can be used in a lot of different ways. So we're going to intentionally experiment with our gear. We're going to use our ears, and we're going to get creative with what we already have. And that, my friends, is where the good stuff happens. That's where it comes from. Listening and experimenting. It also means that we're going to have to keep a record of these things. We're going to have to document these tones that we're going to be working on. We have to have some sort of a recording. Well, phone. That's the easiest way. If you don't have anything else, use your phone. And you could record audio or video. I would recommend video. Video can help as far as remembering settings on pedals, settings on amplifiers, which guitar pickup you used, all of those little things that you may forget to write down about. The video can really help you with that. So I would recommend using your phone, videoing how you set up these tones and the adjustments that you make to them. Okay, so it's a challenge. Usually a challenge has a time period. Over the weeks, I'm going to say about the next, I don't know, this may go a little bit longer. I've got 4 good weeks down, but we're going to keep this going through the summer. I'm going to see how it goes by the end of the first month. But week 1, we're going to assemble our gear. Shortly there. Okay, so I'm back. Okay, so week 1, we're going to assemble our gear. We're going to work on our preferred style, what you really want to play. Mine is blues and southern rock and jam band music and that style of music. And I'm going to get everything I've got together and take the tones that I usually play with and start to refine them. First part is write down what gear you have available to you. So here's the gear I have available to me. Most of my gear is in storage right now. So this is what I have. I have 2 Stratocasters. I have an acoustic guitar. I have a floorboard. I have a Pod HD 500X. I also have bias amp in both my computer and my laptop too. So that's another thing that I have going for me. And then I have my pedal board. And so on my pedal board, I have a Clyde Wah Wah. I have an EP booster, Tube Screamer TS9. I have an RC booster, an AC booster, a BB preamp. I have the Line 6, the M9, which is the effects, the multi-effects. And then a Boss DD3 and a Digitech RV7, which has the Lexicon reverbs in them. So that's all I have. That's all the gear that I have to work with at the moment. And I'm going to take that gear, and I may not even use bias, the effects, because it's too easy to get a good sound with that. I may limit myself to the HD 500X. But with that gear that I have this week, I'm going to work on my clean sound, my crunch sound, and my lead sound. 3 tones. So for each style of music, we're going to get 3 tones. For what I'm going to start with, which is like that blues, southern rock, jam band music, I'm going to have most likely a Fender clean and an overdriven. I don't know how I'll go with this. I don't know if I'll go Marshall. I may go Vox, or I may try a different sound for my crunch and then my lead too. So I haven't really worked this out in my mind yet. But the crunch and the lead could be, just a pedal in front of the crunch to boost it. I could combine the two, or I could have two totally different tones. I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm going to come up with. I'm looking forward to seeing what I'm going to come up with. And so throughout this week, we're all going to share the tones that we're coming up with. Now you can play them over, I don't know, background track, or you can play them just raw, so we could really hear what the tones sound like. Then we're going to go to week 2. And week 2 is we're going to take the experience we have with the gear that we've been working with, and we're going to switch the style. We're going to switch a style to something different that you would like to be able to play. So not your regular bread and butter tones. For me, it might be, I don't know, a fusion sound, or maybe just like a Satriani Vi type, something that's like just full out like that. It could even be heavy metal type sound, something completely different than what I have been playing normally. And for that, week 2, we're going to have a clean sound, a crunch sound, and a lead sound. Week 3, we're going to start to experiment with effects a little bit more. We're going to take these 2 weeks of tones that we have, and we're going to start adding delays to them and start understanding what delay can do to your guitar tone, which is very, very important, and it's very much overlooked. It can put your guitar playing in a space like a reverb does, or it can accentuate what you're doing. If it's kind of like the edge or something like that, where the actual delays become a part of your tone. It can widen the sound. It's so many different things a delay can do. So we're going to find delays that fit for both styles, the clean, the crunch, and the lead. Week 4. Week 4 is modulation, chorus sounds, phaser sounds, flanger sounds, all of those effects that create interest. It could even be pitch shifting. It could be whatever is appropriate for the style of music that we're working on. We're going to spend a week filling out those sounds that bring more interest to our tones. For both of those, for the style of music that you normally play, the style of music that you want to play. So at that point, we should really understand the gear that we have and really have a solid foundation for playing, for recording, and both that and playing out. Okay? So that's the basis for this challenge. That's 1 month of the challenge. And we'll see how it goes. It may go longer than that. We'll see. How do we get involved with this? So this challenge is being held in the Play Guitar Facebook group. That's where this is going on. So I suggest that you head on over there. It's playguitargroup.com. It is where it's at. It is a cool guitar group, and we're going to be positive and helpful and sharing and listening to other people's guitar tones and giving ideas. Maybe you might want to try this or might want to try that. Lifting each other up, making sure that we have the tones that we need, and if there's any problems with it, that it's very hard when you're invested in a certain tone. You have an idea of exactly what you want, and it may not be right. I've done that many times where I thought, I want to use a Les Paul with this amp and get this kind of tone, and it ends up not working out so well. And maybe a tip from someone or an idea, say, hey, why don't you try even as much as rolling a tone knob down or something like that, and it makes everything work out wonderful. So the Play Guitar Facebook group is where we're holding it. As we go through the weeks and everyone shares those things, I will also share some of the tones that the community members have on the podcast as we go through this week. But I will be starting next week sharing what I've done and how I'm getting my tones together. My tones are not amp tones at this point. I don't have my amps with me. All of my playing is done right here online. So I'm going to get my tones here really, really dialed in. And I'll be sharing those with you next week, as well as anyone from the Facebook group who wants to share on the podcast. That'll be episode 132. And that's it. That is the challenge. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to head over to our chat today, and we're going to talk a little bit about the challenge, and we're going to talk a little bit about first steps getting there. So let's head on over to the chat here. There we go. Okay. So we're going. David says, is anybody ever really totally satisfied with their tone? Every once in a while, you play a gig where it works out just right. And you have this feeling like, everything came together. And then you go to your next gig and you set up the same equipment with the same settings, but in a different room, and it's not working anymore. It's a very finicky thing. And you get close, and then something happens and it's not quite right. But I've been there. I've been close. I've been very close. Steve says, good tone is an endless search. That is, I don't know. I don't know if it could be an endless search. I'm pretty happy with my tone. I know that once I finally stumbled, and we're talking decades going through this, finally stumbled on a few pedals that match the amps that I like, I stopped looking. And I stopped buying pedals. I was pretty happy with the board that I have. I'm very happy with it. You'll see it next week. I'm gonna set video up so you can see all the different things that I'm working on. But I'm pretty happy. I found some really good stuff. And, but people's opinions do change. That since I've been doing more of the online stuff and haven't been playing out for a while, when I start playing out, once you crank this stuff up in a room, it may sound a little different than I remember it before. So I was lucky. I got called to do a party. Was it last year? And it was a really informal party, so I had time to adjust things. And I took my main rig out and was able to crank it up. It was an outdoor thing, so I really got to crank it up. And in the beginning, it took a little bit, but I dialed it in. So Steve says, I just bought a Tube Screamer and a Spark Boost. Good timing. That's right. You got in right before the cutoff. I don't know if you buy something new, I won't tell anybody. But the rule is use the stuff that you have. Okay. Chris says the grass is always greener. Yeah. But a lot of times with the equipment that I've used, especially with pedals, I'll buy a pedal, and if it doesn't work right away, it usually goes into a cardboard box in the garage. and over the years, I'll bring those out and try them again. And sometimes where you thought, oh, I'm just going to sell this whenever I get around to selling things. Sometimes you plug it in. It might be with a different guitar or a different amplifier, and it works it just works. And you're like, why didn't I use this a long time ago? So let's see here. Evan says, I've never really been stuck on my tone, and I'm wondering if I should be addressing it. Well, now's the time where we're going to do some focusing. We're going to really take a listen. The problem is you have an amp, you have your pedals, you have your guitar, or whatever online, plug-in in direct or however you do it, but especially with an amp. And depending on where your ears are from where the amp is, you're making decisions about how you're setting things up. And if your amp is down by your feet, and if you have a small amp and it's pointing away, it's not pointing directly at you, you may think it doesn't sound bright enough. So you may turn some brights up. This is the classic people in the front row when you get out to play going like this, right? Because you're so used to playing the amp when it's not pointed directly at your face. So and you see a lot of people will tilt their amp back, and so they get a better idea of what's the direct sound coming out of the speakers. And to me, that's always been a problem, because a lot of the sound that I like has to do with how it when it's flat on the floor, and how that sounds. It sounds differently when you tilt it back. You lose some low end. So we're gonna address all of that this week. Steve says, I like my tone at home, but not so much with the band. I don't play the same music in both situations, which is part of the problem. Yeah. I've got to the point where my gigging setup stayed in the garage ready to go, and I had a whole other setup at home where I was working on things. And the problem was with that is at the gig, I would say I'd be playing them like, I need to work on that at home. I wouldn't like how woofy like the low end is on something. I'm not. You know what it was? It was the AC booster. It's a very woolly sound, and so I said I really need to experiment with this and make sure that I'm not getting muddy when I'm up on stage. And I come home from the gig and I put all my stuff away. I would never do it because it didn't come inside with me. So there's pros and cons to that. But what I did used to, I'd have one set up for inside and one set up for when I gig. And I don't know if that was good or not, David says, right now all I have is a Line 6 Spider amp and a Metal Zone pedal. my Spark amp seems to be never coming. Well, with the Spider amp, you have a lot of different models in there, and probably some that you haven't spent a lot of time with. And it might be a good time to go through all of those and experiment. And especially when I know what David's style of music, his main style would be, so I have a good idea what he would choose for that. But for week 2, when we're going to try something different, maybe you could go through that Spider amp and really see what it can do. Really spend time, going through each of the tones, and sometimes using maybe your bridge pickup on that tone, and sometimes switching around into the other pickups configuration, so where you might get some really cool sounds that you might not have ever gone through. So we're going to intentionally explore the gear that we have and get to know it really well. As I don't think many people spend the time to really explore what their gear can do, the different sounds. They have an idea of what they want, and they try to make what they bought sound a certain way. And in doing that, you might be missing some really, really cool stuff that your amps can do that may not be that idea of what you really want it to do. Let's see, it was a Champ. It was a Silverface Champ that I had, and I wanted it to have that kind of tweed Champ sound. I wanted to crank it up and it sound like ZZ Top, It just didn't. It had a black face sound. It had a scooped sound to it. And I would put pedals in front of it. I actually tried getting in and messing with the tone stack and everything like that. And finally I put it back to the way it was supposed to be, and use that for a 60s blackface type sound, and it recorded better than my big Fender did. So, sometimes you might be trying to make something do something that it may not be intended to do, and missing some of the good tones that are in there. Evan says, I might prefer to go through the DAW using plugins over using the little multi-effects, all these decisions. Yeah, you could. I would, like I did when I said, well, I've got bias, amp, but I've got my floorboard that I'm never really happy with, I'm hoping to get out of this from this first week and get some really good tones out of this. And I know they're in there. I don't think I've spent enough time to get them yet. The time that I have spent, what I ended up with was passable, but there may be some better tones in there. This Line 6 has a tone app for the computer where you can control it there, so you're not down pushing buttons. And I think that I'm going to install that on this computer and start working through it. But yeah, going through the DAW using plugins, that's always tricky too, because you have a latency issue with those. I find what I'll do with plugins, the ones I like were the Scuffum S-Gear. I use that and got some really good sounds from that. And usually with these plugins, they'll give you two. They give you one that's a VST that goes, you're supposed to use in your recording program, but then they have a standalone one as well. And the standalone ones generally don't have the latency issues than having to go through your recording setup. So a lot of times I'll play the standalone and play along with songs so it feels right. It's tracking with your playing. You don't have the latency. And then what I'll do is I'll make that a preset, and then put it into the and play that while I'm recording with the standalone, even though the recording program is only getting my clean, my direct guitar sound, and then put it back in later. So let's see. Matt. Hey, Matt. Good to see you. Matt says, my Vox modeling amp has too many options. I just used the Fender Tweed and blackface setups for clean and the AC30 for fuzz. Yeah, I had a Vox. I used to teach on a Vox DA5, just a little one of those little guys. It was white, and it had. I used the blackface setup for the clean, and then I would go to, I think there was a Marshall setup for a lead sound, and that's all I ever used it for. And this would have been a good time for me to experiment with some of the other ones. I know the Vox, the AC30 model on that one was pretty good too. Brennan's here, and he said, "Oh, okay." And yeah, so that's where we are. We are at the beginning steps of this challenge, and I'm really looking forward to this. This one's exciting to me. I'd like to hear, and not only hear what everybody comes up with, but to hear the sounds that they've been using before get better and better and better. So looking forward to that. There's no download sheet for this. I may put some instructions into the Facebook group. But really the only thing is to join the Facebook group and participate and listen and comment on others. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And that's what I have for us this week. Just kicking this off. I don't have my sounds yet, but I'm looking forward to doing them this week. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and end the podcast, and then we'll still hang out for a little while. So I'm going to call it. That's a wrap. Thanks for joining me today for the Play Guitar Podcast. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast player. Also, I really appreciate if you could leave a review for the show. If you're just starting or new to the guitar, head over to starthereguitar.com. Check out my premium 11-week beginner's course. It gives you the foundation you need to move forward correctly on the guitar. Follow me on all my different social media pages. Links to them are at playguitaracademy.com. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next episode. End of audio podcast. Now back to the video podcast. Yeah, I was. I'll say it right now about Evans. If everyone's in the Facebook group, you can check out Evan's song that he put up there, and he's been getting brave and putting his vocals up there. And Brennan says he likes them. Sounds good. And Evan says they're not where I want them yet, but take two is much better than take one. Hopefully they'll continue to improve. It's hard to get personality and energy into them. Yes. And here's what my initial thoughts were. When you hear someone's voice for the first time, it's normal that you think of someone's voice and relate it to a famous voice. And that's actually a good thing, because when you can get when you can analyze someone who has a similar voice to you, what they do to make their voice sit well in a mix, it's pretty powerful, and it saves a lot of time. So just try to emulate what they did and see if that works for your voice. Now someone said here, I'm going to scroll back here. Someone says here that, or maybe it was in the Facebook group, they said it had like a David Bowie type sound to it. I thought that the lower register reminded me of a John Lennon type voice. And what John Lennon, and if you've ever heard John Lennon's voice live compared to recorded, it's very different. And what he would do is he would double track his voice, and he would also put a little bit of slap back delay on his voice. And one of the two tracks of his voice was up front, and the other one is back a little bit, filled it out. So to me, that's the quality, that's the tone of your voice. Now, this song is at the lower end of your range. Your voice to me sounds like it's comfortable a little higher than this. So so you could actually experiment. I would experiment with the key of the song a little bit too. I would experiment with maybe bringing it up a half step or a whole step, and seeing if that's comfortable for your voice. So some of what I heard sounded like it was at the bottom of where your voice wants to go. And so everyone's voice has kind of a sweet spot. And this is where people get confused about keys. Just because your voice sounds good in one key doesn't mean that it's going to sound good in that same key on other songs. And that's because of the range of the melody. So say you're in the key of D and it sounds good, and it's a song where the range is in the middle, and it suits, that's the range of notes that suits your voice. But you could have another song that's in the key of D, but it's a high, the melodies, the melody choices, the notes for that are very high, even though it's in the key of D. That might not suit your voice. So you have to think of, there are certain pitches in your voice that sound good, and that might work in one key and not work in the other, depending on the range of the note choices for the melody. So I was so once my first impression was, it has that it has like a John Lennon type quality, and the things that, and I thought, man, I'd like to hear him double track that. I'd like to hear that kind of some slap back delay, not a huge reverb. He used, it was a very, very, I think he actually used real tape machines to get that delay on his voice there. And then I thought also that if you moved it up just a little bit, change the key a little bit and see how that sounds. So not to change the recording at all, but maybe just with your phone and your guitar, try singing the song again, but using the capo, or just trying to figure out what those chords are, a half step or a whole step up, just to see what you think, and compare the two. So that was my initial impressions. I thought the pitch was fine. Everybody struggles with pitch here and there. And I know you said you used like an auto-tune type thing on that. For auto-tune now, when I did auto-tune first, it was for effect. And now, and there's a lot of different auto-tune type programs. Cakewalk used to come with a different one. It was a different thing. But now it's used a lot more for correcting, when you have one note, like Melodyne. Melodyne, you can actually play a chord on guitar or on a piano or any instrument, chordal instrument, and then change one of the notes. Maybe one of them was out of tune, and you can tune one of them. It's really wild what you can do with that now. So a lot of the auto tuning type things that you won't even know that you'd never even be able to hear that something's been done with it, not like it was before. And so Evan says, I was thinking I'd try doubling the vocals once I was able to start getting the takes I liked. Yeah. I'm just giving you my first impressions. That was my first impressions. And David says, I was the one who said Bowie, but I also thought the Beatles, right? And Evan says, I'm just so darn shy in front of the microphone. But you sound like you. And nobody else in the world sounds like you, And Steve's saying that right. He says, just be yourself, Evan. You can't force anything. No, just sing it. We're going to, we could, for this tone experiment, you could also do recording tones, taking some time with your voice, figuring out where it sits nicely. So those were the things that I thought when I listened to Evan's. I didn't hear the whole thing, but I listened to about half of it, and that's what I thought. I I thought that the key could maybe go up a little bit, and not for you singing in a high register, but the singing exactly where you are, but maybe the key of the song come up a little bit. And David says, not too shy. I don't know if I could ever do what you've done. Right? Yeah. He says, come along. I'm happier with it than I expected to be. Isn't that cool though, man? You know, that Evan's taking a risk. You know, it's risky. It's risky to put yourself out there. And it's not fun at first at all. It's not fun. But isn't it cool that you're doing it, that he felt comfortable enough with us to share that? I think that's awesome. I think it's cool. Very, very, very cool. Evans, I never thought I could either. Right. But we're going to work on it, man. You know, it's going to get good. You'll be comfortable at some point. Steve says it takes time to be comfortable with your own voice. It's just another instrument to practice with and will prove in time. I agree 100%. I agree with that. It's most people start singing and they just start singing. And you've heard it's all over the place. Some people start singing and their instrument works correctly, and some people, they're not sure how the instrument works, and it takes time. It really takes time to know how it feels when you're hitting pitches. The singing the do re mi fa, singing up and down the major scale, and then jumping intervals and all those things sounds hokey, but it's super important. You know, you need to know what it feels like when you're going from a lower note to a higher note. When you're trying to hit that interval, you don't jump up to the higher note and fall short. You know, and those are things that can be done, can be worked on. You know, so great job, Evan. I'm happy that you felt comfortable enough to share that. I think you're going to be all the better for it, and I think it's a good. It's good for others to see that, hey, he put himself out there, he did it, and everybody's being supportive. And maybe I can do that too. You know, there's no, you know, there's being helpful and say, hey man, try this. Why don't you try this? Why don't you try this? And then there's people who are just mean, you know, could say mean stuff all the time. I've been on the on the receiving end of both of those, both sides, you know, and you just that's what I'm so happy with this is we don't have a whole lot of people who decide to well, let's just say this. A lot of people who are super critical of other people have other issues that they're dealing with, you know, and we're just going to be very keeping an eye out for anything like that. So I'm so happy that, I hope other people will take the risk, you know, and share. And that's how you get better, you know. So Evan says, everyone's been very positive and supportive. Great. And Steve says, I was a drummer before I started singing. Didn't know what to do with my hands, which is why I got into guitar. Yeah. It's singing. When I sing now and I don't have my guitar on, even if I'm not playing it, if I don't have it on, it doesn't feel right to me. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a comfort thing, you know. I don't know, but not knowing what to do with your hands, that I remember that. And Matt says it's an inspiration, Evan, for me, and I'm sure for many others in the group. Yeah, and that's the reason why with the coaching that I really like. And we talked about this yesterday, how some people may not want other people to see their coaching sessions and practicing and stuff like that. But why I've set it up where you can't, you can go in and look at everyone else, see what they're learning and what they got out of it and what they're not getting out of it and all those things. It's super, it speeds up the process so much, when you can step outside of yourself for a second and see what someone else is going through the same thing or going through something that you're headed towards, and see how they're dealing with it and what they get from it, and then be able to put it back on yourself and say, am I getting that? Or defeating that feeling like I can never do that, and when you see someone else who struggles with it too and then gets it, you can say, oh, it's not that hard to do. I just need to put a little time into it. It's very this whole thing is about everything that I'm doing here is helping people who've been frustrated with the guitar, who want to become the guitarist that they've always wanted to be. And I'm trying to help people do that in the shortest amount of time possible. And these things that feel uncomfortable are it's like superfood, It's like you like what Evan's going through right now. Evan has been nervous. He did it anyway, right? He's nervous. He's not sure what people are going to say. He's putting out something there. He's putting unfinished product out there too, which is something that a lot of people will never do. They'll never share their behind the scenes stuff until it's perfect, right? Which is a good way to spend years without getting results. The fact that Evan's putting this stuff out here right now and sharing it and opening himself up to people's comments and stuff like that, it's uncomfortable, but it's growth, and it's quick growth. It's fast. And if you can get the nerve to put yourself out there fast, and I wouldn't say talked about this before, and there's a lot of guitar groups out there with a bunch of problems, we'll just say, right? So that you have, and why I'm really proud of what we've been building is that he felt safe to be able to do that. And even though he was uncomfortable, he put something out there. And Chris Ward does this too. I mean, he'll work on a lick or a riff and then just put it up there, and see what people think. It's great. It's great. It's hard to do, but look at Chris's playing. It's coming along like that. There's progress going on here, which is not what you typically see. You see people beating their head against the wall trying to do a certain thing so they can do a video that shows them doing something crazy. We're trying to become players. That's why I like to say, hey, players, how you doing? Because we're trying to be what's a player, What was CGP, right? Was it Leo Kaki and what was this name? Emmanuel, and there was 3 or 4 of them that Chet Atkins certified as players, right? That's a compliment. That's a way of life. That's some good stuff. So let's see here. David says, I felt off just saying aardvark and elephant when strumming. Yeah. You know what? So what David's talking about is for people who are new to get strumming on the guitar, or for people who have struggled with strumming on the guitar. We have level 102. So it's not a beginner, it's not just picking up the guitar, but it's one of the most important things that you need to understand that how rhythms work and how you split up a measure and how downstrokes and upstrokes go across strong beats and weak beats. And I found, and this is not my the words that we use are words that I came up with. We match syllables of words to strumming patterns. And that speeds up the process tenfold. It does something when you equate strumming with words, with syllables, with how you say it. They get hardwired in your brain fast. And the words that I chose were silly words. And it feels silly. And think about how many times I've taught this and how silly I feel when I say aardvark, elephant, grasshopper, all those kind of things. But it works. And once you, I'll be just fooling around playing something like that, and in my head I'm going aardvark, elephant, grass, all of the it puts you on the path to being on autopilot and strumming guitar. So that's what David's talking about when he says he felt off just saying aardvark and elephant was strum. Yeah, it's silly. It's silly saying those words, but those silly words, and you'll ask, what's really cool is I'm starting to get some of my old students coming in to taking the leap to coming online. So you can ask any of them that you'll get to know them. They're in our second group. I have 3 of my older students who've decided to try this out, and you can ask them about aardvark, elephant, grasshopper, all that stuff, right? Evan says it works, Lee. Well, thank you, man. He says, Evan says, I remembered a podcast where Lee said, few people are bold enough to show you the process, and that it kind of skewed perceptions, and that kind of stuck with me. Yeah. Yeah, the people, I don't even think it's that people are scared. I think it's people have been treated poorly maybe in music or maybe in other areas of their life. Something, you see little kids when they start to play guitar. I've taught a lot of young kids how to play guitar. And when they get something that sounds good to them, it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, and as they get into like junior high school or like middle school is what it is, which is like 12 years old, 11 years old, and things change. You can see that they get more reserved. Why? Because they're dealing with a lot of bullying and negative, and it could even be from your family. And a lot of people who want to play guitar get really get no positive reinforcement from their family too, which sucks. That's not the way it should be. But yeah, so that boldness that I see from little kids who, when they first start to really learn the guitar, and and a lot of little kids will try to sing because they don't have that fear of what they sound like, and something happens in between 8, 9, 10 to 12, and I think it's peers. That's what I think it is. Chris says, cheers, Lee. Yeah, makes for better progress. Strip away the fears. That's right. Steve says, I've been told I've sound everything from fantastic to monotone. Right. So just put everything in and enjoy it. You can't please everyone. But you can have fun along the way. He's correct. Yeah, I've the same thing. I've had the same thing. And you get hardened to it because you think, okay, someone's going to come up and say something really nice, right? Or they're going to say something really, really critical. So this is about my guitar playing, but it's the same thing. So we played the Blues Music Awards and the second time I played it, and it was going wonderful. We played and went great, and people were just saying really nice things about me playing and all that kind of stuff. It went really well. And then one guy comes up to me who's like a blues purist guy, and he just let me have it because he thought I used too much gain in my solos. Right? Now, I to this day don't know who he is. He wasn't, and I didn't ask to talk. I mean, I was sitting there minding my own business with the band, and he just made a point to come up to me and try and rip me a new one, because he didn't like my tone that I was using. Well, at the time, the tone I was using was very progressive for blues. And it's basically when you hear blues now, right? What like you hear like Joe Bonamassa and all these guys, they're using much heavier tones than what I was doing. But this guy decided he was going to come up and do that. And for a split second, I let it get to me, right? And then I realized, you know what? I'm not doing this for him, and I'm not doing it for anybody else. I'm doing it for myself. I'm on a journey. I'm trying to get better. And it's kind of like with the podcast too. I get tons and tons of people saying nice things, and then you get one person who says something crappy, and it just knocks the wind out of me, So you got to be, what I'm learning is that you have to guard yourself. You have to know, I'm doing this for a reason, and I'm not doing it for that person. I'm doing it for me, right? And I know I'm not perfect. I can't be perfect, but I'm doing good, and as long as I get better and better, then I'm happy with what I'm doing. And that helps when you get people saying some, giving you some crap. You can it's easier to just say, right, I'm busy, I'm doing this, you're not doing this, I'm doing this. And that's the other thing too, when people are critical of you, and yet they don't even try to do anything like that. So you're putting yourself out there, you're doing the work, and obviously not for financial gain. If you're playing guitar for financial gain, you'll be very disappointed, right? You're doing this for other reasons. And someone who's too chicken to even try it is going to come up and give you a piece of their mind. You get, at first that gets to you, and then you start to see it. You start to see, wait, this isn't about me. It's not about me. So dealing with other people is always tough. So all the way around to this is, I'm so happy that we can have a place where Evan is doing something that's probably going to change his life. He's doing something, he's getting into new territory that he didn't even realize that he even wanted to get into, right? And he has a place where he feels comfortable to do that. To me, that's fantastic. Completely fantastic. Very happy about that. And I hope everybody feels that way. And if we find that people are coming in here and being rude and critical, there's a way to say anything, and it all comes from your heart. If you can say, hey, why don't you try this? If you've noticed, for people who I teach, I don't go, we talked about this, I don't go, oh, that sucked, stop doing that, do it this way. I don't, that is the best way to stop someone's forward progress, and just stop them in their tracks. So if any of you here in the Facebook group or in the coaching or in whatever we're doing, take a chance and share, rest assured, if it comes to my knowledge that somebody is going to be ugly about it, they won't be a part of this anymore. Okay? That's all I'm saying. Because I understand. I've been on the receiving end of that a lot. Okay, so let's look back to the chat a little bit. Then I'm gonna close things up here for the week. Steve says, I'll put a recording on Facebook and you can all let me have it. Well, we love to see it. We'd love to see it, man. I just always think it's interesting seeing other people's playing and the way that people approach things. I just think it's fun. I like that better than listening to pro, I don't really listen to Spotify and that anymore. I would rather hear people jamming, and playing live. I don't really listen to a whole lot of recorded music. I listen to a lot of live music. I really enjoy live music. I really enjoy that. Evan says, it has already changed my life. I'm on the verge of accomplishing a very big goal of mine. Wonderful. Wonderful. So I'm happy. I'm happy about all this. And I hope you guys take the next month or two and really spend some time with the gear that you have and get out of the gear rabbit hole. Really spend some time learning how your amps, how your guitars, how your effects work, and coming up with some new sounds from what you already have, and getting creative with those sounds. I'm curious to see that. I'm looking forward to it too. So today was fun for me. The whole thing was fun. This was an easy one. I didn't have a whole lot of podcast. I didn't want to. I wanted to kick something off. I wanted to see something where we can really see some growth long term. So it was easy for me to get this together, and it was fun talking to you guys after the podcast was over. It was fun. So you guys, I hope you have a nice week. I'm not putting YouTube videos out this week. This is it for me. For this week, I've got a lot of things that I need to take care of. I've got a lot of academy things that need to be taken care of. Where the experiment that we did is great, but it's very time consuming, and there's some things that need to be done. I need to get these videos out. I've got, for level 102, 103, 102, 201, 202, 203, I have all of those videos recorded. They just need to be edited and have some visuals along with them, which takes time, and that's time I haven't had because of the during the week experiment stuff. So I'm going to put that on hold for a while and get everything done. I like having these videos up, especially for coaching members, so you can go back and see. So we've had a couple of the new group who need to fill in some gaps, and I have all the 101 level up there, and a few of them are going through the 101 levels and filling in all those gaps right there. So on their own time, separate from the coaching there. So I'd like to have it all filled out so everybody can do that. Okay, thanks David and Evan and Steve and Chris. And Matt was here. Brennan. Did I say Dave? I think I said David. Kevin. Great to have you. Kevin was first, man. He's good. He was on there before. No, I had mine. I got one in before he did. Right. But thank you guys for hanging out with me today. And have a great week. Stay safe and stay healthy. And I will see you all on Friday. Bye-bye.